Hello, hello, and welcome back to yet another NFL video. We are back with part 5 out of 32 for the NFL quick sub 10-minute season recaps. Today we got the Atlanta Falcons, man. I hope all the Falcons fans that I know are doing well because let's just get right into it, man. Thank you for watching. Let's go ahead. Throw things here. The majority of Falcons fans are unhappy with the way this season went down. Um, the end of the season was a complete disaster. I mean, in terms of wins and losses, um, one thing, first of all, that I'd like to take credit for is that when everybody and their mother was hating on the Michael Penix pick, I mentioned this exact scenario ahead of time. And I would just like to point out if they did not draft Michael Penix or any quarterback for that matter in the previous draft, we would have seen the Falcons crash and burn with no alternative options. And the entire conversation right now with the Falcons fan base would be, what the hell do we do at quarterback? They do not have to have that discussion at all because they have their future franchise quarterback in house already. And I'm not saying they were expecting this to happen or they hoped they certainly didn't hope this would happen, but they had the emergency precautions in place. And now there is no question about the Falcons quarterback position. I would like to take credit because I said that ahead of time. Um, and listen, I don't really think anybody saw Kirk's downfall incoming. I mean, outside of 2 games against the Buccaneers, which by the way, the man was absolutely incredible. Besides those 2 games, he was awful. I mean, he was flat out. I really should have did something where I compare. When I do the in-depth season or Falcons recap, I will compare Kirk Cousins versus the Buccaneers compared to everybody else because it's night and day, literally. Um, there is certainly a lot of blame to be placed on both Raheem Morris and the GM because listen, they're probably going to have to cut Kirk Cousins. I mean, unless they can find a trade partner who's willing to take on the majority of that contract. I mean, I don't know who would do that though. There's too much risk involved for any other team because I think there's certainly teams that like unless you're the Browns or Titans and you're probably going to draft your quarterback in the first 2 picks, any of these other teams that like you're looking to be replacing quarterback like the Jets, the Saints maybe. I doubt the Saints actually. They'd have to get rid of Derek Carr first, but the Raiders certainly I could see in play for that. I'm just trying to think of other teams off the top of my head. The Giants, maybe. Definitely the Giants are a factor there. So there are teams I think who would be interested in Kirk Cousins, but as far as like taking on his contract, I do not really see that happening. Um, so yeah, it looks like you're going to have to cut Kirk Cousins 1 year into what was it, a 4 year, $160 million or something like that. It's a big contract. Okay, and here's the thing. I'm going to defend the contract. I'm going to defend the move because I'm not going to come on here and switch tunes and be like, oh, I told you guys Kirk Cousins was ass. I never thought he was ass. I thought he had an amazing season last year until obviously the Achilles just cut it short. I honestly, I didn't feel like the injury played a big part in it. I just don't think he ever got comfortable in the Falcons offense. You would expect, right, that he would have if I told you Kirk Cousins was going to be benched by the end of the year. Like you would have, I guess you would have assumed. Well, I don't even know what you would have. It's so strange because the thought process would be right that new quarterback coming in, veteran quarterback, he would struggle early, rehabbing from that Achilles injury, and he would pick the pace up as the season went on. Right? It was the complete opposite. He started off looking really good. Maybe not in the very first game against the Steelers, but I mean, both of those games against the Buccaneers came in that first half of the season. It was towards the end against the Raiders and the Seahawks that he really just kind of shit the bed. And the Falcons, their offense was really terrible, man, at certain points this season. I watched them live one time against my Seahawks. Kirk did next to nothing in that game. Um, and on top of that, the defense certainly was not up to par this season. I mean, considering that Raheem Morris was kind of known as this defensive guy coming in, the defense, yeah, it was no next to no positives to speak of on the defensive side of the ball. With all that being said, let's talk about the positives here. You had breakout seasons from guys like Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod, all on offense. All like, and this is the weird part, right? Because it's like you can't attribute Kirk's failure to anybody else. If you think of every skill position player on the Falcons offense, they either showed up or showed out. Algier did exactly what you thought he would do. Bijan went above and beyond, in my opinion. Drake London, breakout year, above and beyond. Kyle Pitts, I know everybody's going to say he disappeared or whatever. He's pretty much been what he's been the last 3 years. He's been pretty consistent, actually. So he was not a shell of himself or anything like that. He showed up compared to what he's been the last 2 years. Um, Ray McLeod, massive breakout year. Darnell Mooney, massive breakout year. So it's like every single skill position player you can name on the Falcons, they had big seasons. It was entirely on Kirk. And by the way, I don't think the offensive line was bad either. They could run the ball really well. So it's weird. It's like entirely on Kirk Cousins here. Um, but like I said, the good news, at least they know going forward who the QB is going to be because Michael Penix looked really good in their last couple of games. I think he only threw 2 interceptions in all the games he started. Neither of those are his fault whatsoever. I remember them both vividly. One was in the red zone to Kyle Pitts. It was one of the if you're going to drop the ball, brother, just drop the ball. My biggest pet peeve is when a receiver not only drops the ball, but tips the shit up in the air and pretty much hands it to the defender for an interception. It's like, not only are you insulting me by not catching the easily catchable pass, you make millions of dollars, but you're then going to hand the ball over to the defender so it counts as an interception for your quarterback. That was a terrible play by Kyle Pitts. Michael Penix did nothing wrong there. And then there was one, I believe, in the Panthers game. He threw to Ray McLeod, hit him in the chest, all 10 fingers. Ball yet again, ball bounces up in the air, defender snatches it away. So Michael Penix had 2 interceptions, and neither of which were his fault. His last game against the Panthers, honestly, one of the most slept on games of the entire NFL season. That final game between the Falcons and Panthers was amazing, classic. Bryce Young had the best game of his career. Michael Penix was balling. That could be a very fun matchup for years to come. I want to go see that matchup next year, honestly. But yeah, Penix was electric down the stretch. And both of the games they lost to the Commanders and the Panthers, both games went to overtime. Michael Penix led them down the field in the fourth quarter, but he did not get a chance in overtime, and their defense gave up touchdowns in both those games. So embarrassing from the defense yet again. Um, in terms of positive defensive players, well, just in terms of the defense overall, they're probably going to lose a lot of their veterans. Okay, Matthew Judon, Justin Simmons, both on 1 year contracts, if I'm not mistaken, and then you got Grady Jarrett, I believe, an expiring contract. They might look to cut him if he's not an expiring contract. Jesse Bates, AJ Terrell, both really good players. Arnold Ebiketie, it looked at like the halfway point in the season that he was just a complete bust, but he did turn it around. He ended up having a decent season. Caden Ellis, honestly, was the only guy on this entire defense that I can say he had a breakout season. They need a good draft class, honestly, because last year's class, outside of Michael Penix, contributed literally nothing. Braylon Trice in the second round did not play at all, I don't think. Ruka Roro, where has he been? I think they drafted Brandon Dorlus. Have you heard his name? JD Bertrand played a little bit, but I don't think he made much of a difference. So they need a big draft class because they got next to nothing outside of Penix from last year's class. Um, they cannot generate any pressure as a defense. They brought in Matthew Judon, and that did not help whatsoever. Uh, Good news is they finally won more than 7 games for the first time since 2017. They only won 8 games, I think, but I mean, it's an improvement. Um, and here's the thing they scored 68 more points than they did last season. That is a massive fucking number. 68 more points. That is respectable. They allowed 50 more points than they did last season as well, but, you know, positive improvements there. Point differential plus 18 from last year. Fans have the right to be angry. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's important not to overreact. Raheem Morris cannot control Kirk Cousins playing like ass. He just can't do it. He certainly can control this defense playing better. It has to play better next year, or else he has literally no reason to be the head coach. I mean, they can find an offensive guy or a better defensive head coach if he's not going to make this defense at least top 15. But I am certainly on board with giving Raheem Morris another year. If he misses the playoffs again, I'm sure there'll be excuses there, but I mean, the only excuse he really had was they had to bench their quarterback because he was playing so terribly. Um, and the losses to the Commanders and the Panthers, I put them on him because the defense was terrible. Michael Penix and the offense played well both those games. But yeah, man, give Raheem Morris one more year. If they were going to fire him, they obviously would have done it by now. So they're still committed to him. But I mean, I expected the Falcons to win what? I think I said they'd win 11 games and win the NFC South. That was looking like a reality for a big part of the season, but then obviously towards the middle, things just completely caved in. Thankfully, though, like I said, Michael Penix came through. The Falcons fans have hope going forward, and next season, I there was a lot of optimism for this season, but now that they know for sure the future at quarterback and a lot of questions from last year have been answered, I think there is going to be a lot more optimism going forward. And now I think it's clear that the Falcons and the Buccaneers are the two premier teams in the NFC South, with the Panthers coming, depending on how their offseason goes this year. So yeah, I'm excited for the Falcons. I watched a lot of their games this year against my will, but for the first time in a while, I actually wanted to watch the Falcons this year. That will also be the case next season. So that's it for this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I will be back with the Buccaneers video 2 days from now. So keep an eye out for that. Hope y'all have a great day. Peace.